So fountain pens are those pens in which we have to either fill in ink, or it comes with a ink this. So basically this is how the nib is, and some of you will have it in this way where you can fill in the ink, and some of you would have got an ink like a cartilage, right? And since you all have already used, and most of you all have been using ballpoint pens or gel pens, so there's a difference between the lead of the ballpoint pen and the ink pen, correct? Now, ink pen, basically fountain pens and not ink pen as we learnt yesterday. So these pens, the nibs are very delicate. Just like for your outline pen, we were very careful that we are not supposed to press the nib because it may spoil your work. Same way, even like it will spoil the nib of the pen, same way even for this, we do not press the nib. We get ink bottles for this, right, depending on the colors. So I am using blue and black. Okay. Now, how can we create artwork with fountain pen is what we will learn today. All right. To begin with, we will understand how to hold the pen. You cannot hold the pen like 90 degrees. It's always often slanted, and this part of the nib, see, this is one part, this is the other part. This is the part which remains on the top. This is the part which faces your paper. So it's always like this. You don't go like this or like this, not even like slant. Because what we are going to use is the tip. Alright? Fountain pens, if often it has been seen that if it is used on a very thin paper, for example 30 GSM or 40 GSM, the ink may bleed or it may start blotting on the paper. So it's always preferred that you use at least 70 GSM paper, which is your printer paper thickness. So do not use in newspapers. If you want to use in newspapers, then Economic Times or Times of India or Asian Age or the Hindu are the only newspapers in which a fountain pen can be used. No other paper is suggested. Not even the Telegraph. Not even the Tribune, not even Deccan Herald or any other paper. Okay? Because those papers they have an ink of their own, and when the papers gets printed, right, the ink already spreads on all the paper. That's why they cannot take further ink. Okay? Now, the best way, as I said, that this has to be kept on the top and this part has to be facing your paper. So, I will just begin with a basic shape. That's a square or a rectangle or a slanting square, let's say. Now, if you notice where I am holding the pen, I am not holding here. Unlike your ballpoint pens, if you hold your fountain pen here, then your nib is gonna get into two pieces. It will immediately split from here. Never hold here because you will not be able to write unless you are that kind of a expert handwriting person. So the best place is this part, like this portion. So you get a proper grip on the paper. Okay? And you cannot, if you try and hold an ink fountain pen like this, you will not be able to write. It's always with two fingers. Your middle finger provides support over here. Okay? So, now let's say if I have to draw, I'm just drawing a slanting rectangle. We do get erasers also with which you can erase fountain pen. But the problem is the moment you start erasing, your paper will tear. The paper in that portion becomes rough. So avoid doing that. Okay. Now let's say if we have to shade this, because that is the purpose of us using a fountain pen. Correct? So just like your outline pen, when we have to shade light or dark, we hold it little behind, little bit in front. Same thing will happen with the fountain pen also. So, but no matter what, your tip will never go like this, will never go like this. It will always be, this part will always be on the top. Okay? So if I have to shade this part, there is one thing that in this you can't get very light effect. Like in your outline pens or in your ballpoint pens, when we do like this, we get a light effect over here, isn't it? But with fountain pen, that does not happen because it is ink. Just like your water paints, just like water paint spreads in the paper, same way the ink spreads on the paper. Okay? I'm not going to do the entire shading, I'll just do a little bit. Reason being, then I'll show you that how we can spread it with water. Now with ink pen, like with the ink of the fountain pen, it's always that even after 5-6 years, if you apply water, it will spread. Okay? Even if you apply water after 5-6 years, the ink will spread. Alright? Notice I am leaving gaps and making the shade. Just trying to add a little textural effect. Right? This is just like, think that you're using graphite or you are using color pencils. But at no point I am pressing the nib. I'm not applying pressure on the nib. And every time I try to go sideways, see, if I'm going sideways, there will be no ink coming out. And an empty fountain pen tip, an empty fountain pen's nib is the best indenting tool. Because the tip is not sharp, it's round. Correct? So just like when we work with graphite and all, we try to, like, little bit, we keep on lifting our pencil in order to create that textural effect. That is the exact thing that I'm doing over here. It's very good for creating fine lines. See. It's like wonderful to create fine lines. You get thin line, and it's also very easy to fill in small lines with it, because in this the ink will spread only where you want it to spread. It will not spread everywhere. Okay, I'm not making an eye, I'm just trying to show you all that how fine lines can work. A lot of time we make these kind of curvy lines, we make bushes and all, then the scribbling work that happens, scribbling, scumbling, and I'm sure you all know what is this. Stippling. Okay, very good question. I'm not holding 90 degree. And correct, generally for stippling or for pointillism, we have to hold it 90 degree. But in this, the ink flows into the tip. You don't have to force the ink to come out. Just like your brush pens, ink is flowing. So you are just going like this. You're just with a gentle touch. With the normal grip, just instead of going like this, you're going like this. But you're not making this. You're just going 75 degree or 65 degree instead of this. And the other benefit is, yes, and no, 45 would be this. 45 degree would be this. So we are going almost 65 degrees. Yes. Now the other benefit of doing stippling with this fountain pen is you have to just do a gentle touch. Just with a gentle touch, you are able to get the dots. And it's faster with fountain pen, trust me. Okay, now let's say if I have to, oh, thank God it's a good circle. Okay, and I just make one side little dark, because the other sides maybe I just need it to be not exactly dark, but kind of gradual gradient. So till wherever I want it to be dark, I will make it dark. I would suggest you guys to first draw it with pencil and then draw with pen, because that will help you all to get the shapes correctly. Okay, so now if I have to just correct this, I will just take this here, kind of half moon. Yes, like a half crescent. Yes. Now this we did when we started, right? So this ink is probably more dry compared to this. So let's see how will water work on this and how will water work on this. Will there be any difference or will there not be any difference? So let's understand that. I'm just taking a normal brush and clean water. And I'm not going to take excessive water. Just going to dip my brush in water and so if you notice one thing, even though the ink is spreading, the darkness of the ink, the lines that we drew is not lost. Right? The darkness of the lines that we drew is not lost, that is still present over there. What is happening is it is just helping me to get the shade all over. Now for the circle, let's say I first start from this line. Okay, Now one thing you have to be very careful, that when you are applying water on this line, you should just touch the line, because if your water goes outside the line, then the ink will spread outside. Okay, so we have to make sure that the ink does not spread outside, it remains inside. So just apply the technique of curve, and then go a little bit on this, because we need the black color, or like whichever color your pen is. And then you start spreading it. I need a flat brush. Okay, and how much ever you want, you can spread it, spread the ink. Just keep in mind that too much of water usage on the paper may spoil your paper if it is not a watercolor paper. And since we are using a normal 180 GSM, so suggested not to use too much water. Now let's see if I have to use pen on top of it. This is still wet, correct? So if I use pen, it will bleed. So you actually get your craters on the moon. Correct? But if you notice here, there is no water. Here the water has dried. So here if I put, it will not bleed. It will bleed only where water is there. If water has dried, it will not bleed. Okay, and if you want it to further spread, you can again use just little bit of water there, and you can spread it the place where you want it to. Now here if you notice, water has dried completely. So here if I use my pen, there will be no bleeding over here. So let's say if you want to darken any lines, you can easily wait for water to dry, and then you can darken those areas, or you can further add hatchings, cross hatch. How long does it take to for water to dry? Now let's see, can we use brush directly with the ink? Of course we can. So what you do, you just take ink, instead of color in your brush, you are directly taking ink . So generally in watercolor what you do, or in paint what you do, like be it acrylic, oil or whatever, you take color in your brush, right? But here I am directly taking ink. Directly from the ink pot I am taking the color. Right? I would again suggest that whatever you all have to color it, please do draw it first. Okay? Now so let's say I've just created a very basic heart. Now if I have to spread this, can this be spread? I'm sure it can be. So let's see if it can be spread or not. So for that you will have to remove ink from your brush, and the only thing is that you will have to take little too much of water, because ink once dries, it dries, right? So you will have to add little extra water so that it can spread. But remember, as I said, it will always spread. Once this is done, can we add further color to it, like further ink to it? So I'm just going to take a different ink so that it's understandable. See, where there is water, the ink will bleed over there. But where the ink has dried and water has dried, it's not bleeding. Here it's wet, it will bleed. You can also work with the fountain pen also. So let's say you want to create fine lines again. Wait for water and ink to dry and then create your lines. Okay? Once this is dry, after that you can use your fountain pen on it. So let's say like this is dry. Okay. Yes, now see, you can draw anything that you want. You can create any kind of work with this that you can. And the